Today on Rescue USA.
An afternoon excursion turns into a harrowing 48-hour rescue from Quicksand.
He had already been in the water for 3 hours. It would probably be about 7 hours before we got to him.
Facing darkness and freezing cold, one man's life hangs in the balance.
That's when I got pretty scared that, if it doesn't stop snowing, there's just no way that I can make it.
And it will take multiple teams of search and rescue and the courage of his girlfriend to get this man to safety.
The first responders are giving everything they have to get him out alive.
And he's on the move.
We're all aware of the potential dangers of going out in the remote wilderness. There's getting lost, extreme weather, coming in contact with wild animals. But in February of 2019, a couple hiking in Zion National Park found themselves facing a completely unexpected threat, the vice-like grip of quicksand.
Zion National Park, located in southwestern Utah, is one of the most beautiful outdoor destinations in the United States. With its majestic red rock canyons and crystal blue skies, the park attracts thousands of hikers, tourists, and nature lovers every year.
It's a place to go for refuge. A lot of people come here just to get away from the hustle and bustle. There's a lot of activities. Rock climbing is extremely popular here. Canyoneering, where you go down canyons on a rope, is really popular. And just the plain old hiking up peaks and up around the canyons and things like that.
I've been to Zion probably 4 times, and I really love being in there, just seeing the different rock formations and the colors and everything. I've just always liked Zion a lot.
For Valentine's Day weekend, Ryan and his girlfriend Jessica McNeil decided to make the trip to Zion from Mesa, Arizona. Their plan? Explore a popular but difficult hike in the park.
We decided to hike the subway route. We saw a lot of pictures on social media, and it looked really cool, so we decided to try it out when neither of us have ever been there.
I think a lot of people, they see the subway route as being really popular and they think they've got it, they can handle it, but they don't realize that it is actually more of an expert route. You're walking through water most of the time, you're crossing the creek multiple times. It's really poor footing.
Although there was still snow on the ground, the weather on February 16th was sunny and beautiful to start. Ryan, being a more experienced hiker than Jessica, felt that he knew what to expect.
We had looked at the weather, and it was supposed to snow a little bit, but not anything too crazy. I had let Jessica know that she would probably just need a long sleeve shirt, maybe a jacket, because she gets colder. And all I had was a jacket on also.
But the two hikers had no idea that there was a major storm moving in.
That particular day, we did see some weather coming in. It was supposed to get pretty cold that night, so we knew that if there were to be a rescue, we knew that we'd probably have to prepare for winter conditions.
It's very important whenever you're going out into the wilderness to check the weather reports. The weather may seem fine at the start of the day, but if a major storm or flood strikes, it can spell disaster.
A cold front was positioned just to the northwest of Zion early that morning, and a winter weather advisory had been issued. As soon as the front passed, temperatures plummeted, and as expected, snow began to accumulate.
We were hiking about 5 hours, so we were probably about 5 miles in. We were taking our time also. We weren't in a huge rush because we started really early in the morning.
The two were preparing to head back to their base camp, but their trip would soon take a horrifying turn as they waded through a shallow portion of the river.
We walked through that, and then there was just, it was thick sand, kind of mushy. Out of nowhere, I just fell, one of my legs just dropped into the sand, and then that's where I panicked.
At that point, when I was helping her get out, I didn't realize that my right leg was sinking in the whole time. I went to get out myself, and so I pulled my left leg out. Then when I went to pull my right leg out, I couldn't move it at all.
I rolled up my sleeves and I just got on my knees and tried to dig the sand out with both my hands in the water. But it was hard because the river is just constantly running, so it's pushing the sand back into where I was digging.
Although seemingly out of the movies, quicksand is a real thing. It forms when normal sand gets so saturated with water that the sand particles lose friction, making it unable to hold any weight. When agitated, the water rushes out, causing the sand to act like concrete. Jessica and Ryan were hours away from help. To make matters worse, they had no cell phone service. They only had one hope, and it was extremely risky.
I told Jessica she was gonna have to hike all the way back to where we could get cell reception, and I knew where we had lost cell reception was at the very beginning. So she was gonna have to hike all the way back there.
I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this by myself, and I don't know how long he has in the water until maybe he passes out or something, but that was my best shot.
About 30 minutes after she left, it started pouring snow on me. And all I had was my jacket. I actually didn't have my shirt on because I took it off to try to help dig. So I had thrown my shirt to the side. That's when I got pretty scared that, if it doesn't stop snowing, there's just no way that I can make it because it was freezing cold.
After hours of hiking, Jessica herself was fighting exhaustion and the blistering cold. But with no other choice, she said goodbye and set off to find help. Over Valentine's Day weekend, Ryan Osman and girlfriend Jessica McNeil were hiking the canyons of Zion National Park. But when Ryan got trapped in a pool of quicksand, their trip turned terrifying. With no help in sight, Jessica left Ryan and began to hike out of the canyon. But with the coming nightfall and a winter storm blowing in, they both faced potentially deadly circumstances.
I was wet and cold, and I knew he was wet and cold and alone, but I hiked back.
Back at that quicksand, Ryan was also experiencing the effects of hypothermia, and he was fighting to remain conscious.
I thought that, I'd probably lose my leg already. I couldn't feel anything from my thigh down. A few more hours had passed, and I had passed out, basically. So I fell backwards where I was able to get, my whole lower half back in the water, and it woke me up. Falling asleep, it made me feel like, I don't know that I'm gonna make it out of here because it's been so long now.
It must have taken incredible courage and mental stamina for Ryan to be in that freezing cold river for hours, not knowing whether anyone was coming to save him.
What Ryan didn't know was that Jessica had finally managed to make it to a spot on the trail where she could use her phone.
And I called 911, told them where we were at. She made it a three-way call with the park rangers.
We heard that the female up top, that she was going in and out of consciousness, is what our dispatcher said. And she wasn't quite sure where the trailhead was. She knew that she was up close to it and up on the bench again, up on the plateau.
Timothy and a few other rangers managed to locate Jessica, but in her exhausted state, she couldn't remember exactly where Ryan was. But then she thought of something.
He took a picture of me right in front of the waterfall that he was on top of. So I actually showed the ranger that picture, and then they knew exactly where to go.
Timothy quickly assembled a team of rescuers, but he knew time was not on their side.
One thing that concerned us was that he had already been in the water for 3 hours. And in order for us to mobilize and then do the same hike in the dark, it would probably likely be about 7 hours before we got to him.
With temperatures dropping and darkness setting in, Timothy and other rangers packed up gear to spend the night in the canyon. But he knew someone had to get to Ryan quickly. Being the most experienced hiker, Timothy set out alone, ahead of the other rangers.
He was about 4 miles in, and I've done that hike in Canyoneer a lot. You're walking over river rocks, boulders, through the creek, over logs and sticks, and through potentially quicksand. I didn't know the conditions. None of us had been in there in a while, so we didn't know what the conditions were like.
By this point, Ryan had now been in the snowy river for more than 5 hours. He was losing strength and losing hope.
It had been dark now for a couple of hours, and I was so tired that I couldn't stay awake anymore.
And now, Ryan was also starting to hallucinate.
I could hear people talking at times, but there was nobody there. I couldn't pull my face out of my jacket because I was too tired to do it, and it was too cold on my face to be out in the wind.
Then Ryan saw a light, but he wasn't sure if this was just another hallucination.
I I looked over and I could see there was a flashlight, and I heard somebody, so I just started yelling for help. I just started yelling, hey.
When I get above the waterfall, I hear this guy calling to me, and I didn't even believe it was him. I said, where's my patient? Because I didn't think he could be conscious.
Timothy immediately waded out to the center of the stream and tried to pull Ryan out with a harness.
It was like a lever system, so he started, tightening the lever, and it would just pull my body, and it just felt like everything was just ripping from my hips out. And I couldn't take it, and it wasn't moving my leg at all. It was just pulling my upper half.
Every pound I pull is 4 pounds on his body. Tied a little harness around him. The only thing it was doing is making him scream. And he said, it's gonna rip my joints out of my socket. And I thought, you know what? That's not gonna work. But I raided into my team, and they said, we're about 45 minutes out. And I thought, shoot, this is not good.
When two hikers in Zion National Park, Ryan and Jessica, set out for an afternoon hike, they had no idea that they would end up in a fight for their lives. Ryan was trapped in freezing cold quicksand for 7 hours before help arrived. But even rescuer Timothy Noss couldn't pull Ryan out, and their options were quickly dwindling.
I just kept telling Ryan to stay conscious, buddy. Just keep talking to me. He did tell me he fell asleep twice while in the water, and I took that to mean that he probably went unconscious.
Thankfully, the 3 other rangers soon arrived, and they quickly came up with a plan.
He was gonna put the ratchet on my knee and then ratchet it while I held on to the other 2 neck, and he was gonna dig.
And I'd dig on his heel, he'd move a couple centimeters, dig on his shin a couple centimeters. And after about 45 minutes of that, I was able to grab onto the heel of his boot. And I just yanked up with as much might as I could and wiggled it. And I was able to pop it out eventually with the help of my team.
After hours of agony and fear, Ryan was now thankfully and amazingly free of the quicksand. But it wasn't over. There was another safety concern, the condition of Ryan's leg.
He had no circulation, sensation, or movement in his leg, which made me extremely concerned. He's in risk of losing his leg.
Ryan needed urgent medical attention, but there was no way to get a helicopter to them in the dead of night. So they would have to do the unthinkable, make camp and spend the night near the quicksand.
Once I knew that we were staying the night, I just told them that I'm gonna try to go to sleep. I was really exhausted, so I didn't think it would be too hard to fall asleep.
We ended up making a fire, and we made it really big because we were all starting to get cold. We were all starting to worry about our own safety. So the rescuers, we all kind of made ourselves comfortable enough, got some food into ourselves, and then got some food into Ryan too. And then we went to sleep.
The next morning, Timothy contacted the Park Service to try to enlist the help of the Grand Canyon's helicopter rescue. But then they learned that all flights from their location were grounded due to weather.
When I heard Grand Canyon couldn't take off, my heart kind of sank because I knew that was sort of we either needed to get moving or we need to find some other way to get this guy out of here.
But what Timothy didn't know yet was that his incident commander had thankfully contacted the Utah Highway Patrol and requested the use of their air support.
Often in an emergency situation, multiple agencies are called in, from Highway Patrol to fire departments to Park Service. These agencies have to rely on each other to assist in times of crisis.
But this rescue was extremely risky. The conditions were far from safe, and there were only small pockets where the weather was clear enough to fly.
They were in a deep canyon, and we had canyon walls above us on either side, so the aircraft is flying in a relatively confined space below the canyon walls in order to perform this mission.
I'm going to face down canyon, okay, so keep an eye on the trees.
You could hear the helicopter, and at that point I was just like, oh man, it's finally over and I'm out of here.
And he's on the move.
It took about 5 minutes for them to lower one of their crew members in. They kept me in my sleeping bag and just put me in the lift bag.
Hooking in.
We moved Ryan into the aircraft and then flew him to a waiting ambulance. He had some cold injuries as a result of being just exposed all evening and in that cold water. So we dropped him off and then returned to retrieve our team member that we had left down there.
Ryan had been lifted to safety, but Wyatt's team member had some ominous words for Timothy.
We looked around and said, well, good luck getting out of here, guys, because he knew he couldn't take us. We knew that getting out was going to be kind of a rough time.
That's our first responders. putting their lives on the line to help everyone they can.
Ryan Osmond had spent almost 24 hours trapped in the freezing cold Zion Canyon. But thanks to the efforts of the Park Service and Utah Highway Patrol, he was airlifted out and on his way to get medical attention. But rescuer Timothy Nouse and his team were facing their own challenge. After hours in the frigid outdoors, they now had to hike out of the canyon in the middle of a snowstorm.
The hike out was pretty rough, just because the conditions were so poor. We mostly stayed in the creek. We floated down the creek a couple times, just because we didn't want to step into some holes and tweak our knee and things like that.
These rangers put their lives at risk to rescue Ryan and Jessica, despite the freezing cold, treacherous hiking and whiteout conditions. Thankfully, these rangers made their way out of the park to safety.
We got in just before dark, so I think my shift must have been 36 hours or something like that.
Meanwhile, Ryan was being rushed to the hospital, and despite his condition, he only had one thought on his mind.
I couldn't wait to see Jessica because one of the crew members was in the ambulance with me, and she had told me that Jessica was there waiting for me.
And I was nervous when they came up to me and told me that he was ready to see me, because I didn't know his conditions. I didn't know how bad it was.
Got back there, and in about 5 minutes, they had walked Jessica in. And I just started crying seeing her, because I knew that thanks to her, I was still alive.
I went in and I saw him, and he was crying and I was crying, and he thanked me like 1,000 times and told me he loved me, and I told him back.
As happy as they were to see each other, they were still unsure the extent of Ryan's injuries.
A doctor came in and he had said that I should try to walk on it, and that scared me. I was like, I don't think I can walk on it. He's like, well, everything's okay in there, nothing's broken. I walked down the hall, just limped a little bit, but I could walk on my own, and basically laid back down on the bed, and the doctor was like, well, you can pretty much go anytime you want. So about 30 minutes later, we had left.
Both Jessica and Ryan know how lucky they were to survive this ordeal, and they also know how thankful they are for the first responders and for each other.
We're just two strangers to them, and they risked their lives for us, and luckily no one else was hurt, but they had to hike in the dark, and they had to stay overnight and sleep in the snow as well, and that's what makes them a hero.
Jessica's been my hero because she risked her life to save mine, and having her here now to talk to and go through everything through with her, it's helped me a lot.
Recently, Sheldon Yellen reunited Ryan with the air rescue team who saved his life.
I'm really grateful for this opportunity to sit here with all of you guys and talk about what had happened. What would you like to say to these guys?
Thank you guys for saving me. I appreciate you guys. Everyone who needs rescuing down there can rely on you guys, because you guys did an awesome job.
We get a lot of interesting calls, but that was probably the weirdest one we've gotten in a long time.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, now we know there's quicksand in Utah.
Now I know it's real. I want to thank you all for sharing your story. Ryan, again, we're very happy and grateful that you're here with us today, obviously, that Jessica's okay. To these three gentlemen, to the people that did hike up the mountain to find you at first, I want to thank all of them. And I think if there is a message for everybody across this country, it's that I think there is hope, there is good. And you guys do bring out the best in all of us. And we're grateful for your service. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Ryan, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Well, that was a wild story of quicksand in Zion National Park, and Ryan's situation could have easily turned out deadly had it not been for the efforts of the park rangers, the Utah Highway Patrol, and a courageous girlfriend who refused to give up. I'm Ginger Z. Thanks so much for watching.